Greetings, Earthlings. Today's topic is capitalism versus socialism in general, and more specifically, free market capitalism. So, I am convinced that free market capitalism is the best. It's the best form of community organizing. So, if you agree, you're welcome to join in and we can have a conversation around it. If you disagree, if you're a socialist, a Marxist, an anarchist, etc., you are also welcome. We could debate in a respectful atmosphere, okay, environment. So, yeah. I will elaborate a little bit on why, for me, free market capitalism is the best. Okay? And probably definitions are due. So, capitalism, I would define capitalism, and welcome everyone who are just joining, as a form of community organizing which respects the concept of private property, the idea of ownership. So this would be my very basic definition of capitalism, just like this, brainstorming. And free market capitalism, like free market, the adjective would be supporting the idea that market is free. So there shouldn't be any monopoly in the markets. There should be systems, structures that will secure the freedom of the market. For instance, the police, the courts, whenever one businessman or a group of businessmen try to take over some industry or something, other players can use those structures, the police, the court system, they can self-organize, and consumers, just as we witness that now in the United States, consumers can self-organize, they can boycott businesses and show them that they don't like something, like with Tesla. Oh, Zita, thank you for following, and everyone is welcome to tap also on the screen. So yeah, a free market capitalism can take care of itself. People think that for some reason freedom would always be destroyed, but that's a debatable idea. Of course, freedom can be usurped, or there can be attempts. We see this in the political life, we see this in many countries. So yeah, in theory it can be, but like just as we see in the US and elsewhere, consumers have a lot of power. Money is power in some way, and when you choose where to spend your money and where not to spend your money, you are actually affecting the market, and you are helping fight some potential oligarchs, and you're empowering smaller players, right? So freedom has the potential to thrive and to defend itself. Okay, this would be my argument for free market capitalism. Now, as a private tutor and someone who has been living as a private tutor, a trainer, and a coach for the past 9 years of their lives, I would say I love free market capitalism because it gives me all this freedom. I decide when to work, how many hours I want to work, with what clients or customers or people or students I want to work, how much I want to charge them, when I want to change my prices, and based on what. So all of this is given to me, like TikTok asks you to share my life. I encourage you to share my life. Okay. So as a free individual, I have all this freedom, and I love it. In socialism, I do not have all this freedom. Like, I come from a post-Soviet country, the Republic of Armenia, and I heard testimonials. I heard the experiences of people who lived in the USSR. I am born in the USSR. Factually, I was born in 1989, and the country collapsed just probably 3 years later. So I lived in the USSR for a short while. So they tell crazy things like you couldn't have more than one stream of income in the USSR, like professionally. If you worked, you would have to work for the government, in cooperatives, in government established organizations, and in case if a police officer discovered that you were providing some sort of service, like maybe you were fixing the shoes of some people, you would be arrested for that because you were earning extra income in a different way that was not allowed by the government. So this was, socialism. And you couldn't decide like how many hours you wanted to work. You couldn't just be like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. So I don't know if modern socialism has evolved and how easy it is. I guess it is not easy. I guess in socialist structures, they still want you to work for some company or some government agency, and I assume being a private entrepreneur, private tutor isn't as easy as being a regular employee. I worked in China for a while, People's Republic of China, I think it is called, for 6 months. And I experienced some of their collectivism as well. So my contract was for 1 year, but I didn't like it that much, and I just left earlier. So yeah, I love free market capitalism because it gives me a lot of freedom, and that is precious for me. Freedom is very precious for me. Also, what is capitalism? I would like to talk about this. What is capital? Where does it start? So if we look at the word capita, capita or caput in Latin means head. Yeah? So capitalism starts from your head, we could say. In the olden days, men owned everything in ancient Greece and later other societies. You had your economy, or ecos, that's the root word of economy. You had your household, and you, as the man, as the patriarch, owned all the heads, and that included your wife, your children, your slaves, the animal heads, like all the animals you had, right? So everything was yours. So that's the origin of the word capital, caput, the head. So capital is everything that you have. I am developing framework or a paradigm, maybe a way of thinking around capitalism, and I'm working on an essay on capitalism, and I am arguing that capitalism is also very natural, and by natural I mean the idea of individualness, of self-awareness as a single individual, which is different from other individuals, is at the heart of capitalism, and it is a natural phenomenon. Like every existing thing has this form of identity, I would argue. This is why the plant can turn, like the sunflower, for instance. The sunflower follows the sun, yeah? Or every seed chooses when to sprout, right? And when not to sprout. I argue that it requires some sense of intelligence and individualism in the form of maybe not thoughts, not conscious thoughts, but a form of a form of being, and being as an individual. So, like, each seed kind of knows or experiences itself as an individual seed, and as an individual seed, it knows when to sprout and when not to sprout. Or else, if it wasn't the case, I would argue that every seed could, high animal protection, hello, every seed could sprout whenever they wanted to, you know? And it wouldn't work. Nature wouldn't work. Like seeds would die because they would sprout in winter time, right? So, similarly, even planets, like these huge celestial bodies, planets, stars, if they have this gravity, they have this experience of being a unit of some kind. They are sort of experiencing themselves as a single star, a single planet, you know. And of course, single individuals can also experience themselves as something bigger. But in order to experience yourself as something bigger, you still need that individual feeling of I am, of existence, you know. With humans, we can say I am. Maybe with other organisms and units, we could say existence without I am. So I think capitalism starts from there, with capita, meaning the head. Like, you need to have a head, and you need to experience yourself as a single individual. You don't have to have this profound understanding or experience of the universe, but I think in free market capitalism, as a thinking person who is interested in understanding free market capitalism and making it work in the best possible way, this kind of thinking and this kind of experiencing might give us newer ways for real experiencing those things. Yeah, this is my way of thinking, and this is why I like free market capitalism. Some people argue that free market capitalism has outlived itself and it needs to go away, but their alternative is socialism, which does not really respect the individual. They speak of the working class, they speak of a class identity. So you obliterate yourself as an individual. You become an altruist who views the other as someone equal to yourself in all the parameters, even if it's not the case. Leod Mulch writes, just as feudalism couldn't last forever, neither can capitalism. Well, in that thinking, nothing lasts forever. If we take that thinking, then socialism cannot last forever either. And socialism was given a chance. They had a very bloody century, or more than a century, on this planet. We saw socialism in China, in Soviet Russia, in some parts of Europe, in Latin America, and everywhere it was super bloody. Like, just Google it. How many Chinese were killed and were unalivened by Mao, etc., etc. Okay, Liet Mulch writes, correct. Socialism won't last forever, but it is inevitable. Well, it has already expressed itself. Like, there was a time when almost the entire planet was socialist. Like, you had the USSR, huge, like on two continents, Asia and Europe. You had in the UK, they had their socialist period, right? And in Spain, I'm not sure, but like the ideas were common. And in France, they had this the so-called commune, where they tried to establish socialism in a very bloody way. In Latin America, Argentina became so poor and so backward because of socialism. Well, fascism plus socialism, you know? So when you say it is inevitable, I'm not sure you take into account the fact that socialism was already. So it was given a chance, and it showed itself in the most in the bloodiest ways, you know. And even in places like China or Northern Europe, where they experiment with socialism, still they included some components of capitalism. In China, you still have private property, you still have capitalist companies, and they are copycatting. Like, I lived there for 6 months, they are copycatting everything. KFC, Starbucks, all the drinks, all the businesses, they are stealing Western technologies. They are copycatting all the businesses, you know, AliExpress and, you know, stuff like that. It all came from Europe, you know. So, still, socialism, the way it was conceived, it already, as a disease, it already spread across the continent. Well, yeah, we have New York, where they elected a socialist mayor. So let's see how that one goes and plays out, because socialist economy doesn't work. You know, we could maybe talk about this as well. So you write, Marx even says that early stages of communism will resemble capitalism. Well, Marx gave some prognosis forecasts, and he was mistaken. Like, he expected to see socialism and the collapse of capitalism in his lifetime, but that didn't happen, right? In some of his essays and speeches, it was like, just wait for 5 years, like for 20 years. And he was saying that in capitalism, workers are exploited all the time. But you had someone like Henry Ford, who doubled the salaries of his employees, because he said that my employees can become consumers and they also can buy my cars. So it is in my interest also to increase their salaries. And they gave them more free time. They were working for 9 hours. He decreased that to 8 hours. You see? So some of the things that Marx was predicting did not come true. So he was mistaken. And he is not a god, even if you worship him. Just remember that your God committed some mistakes and has forecasts that were proven incorrect. Okay, remember about that when you say Marx says this, Marx says that, you know. By the way, are you interested in coming up and having a dialogue with me? If you'd like to respond, okay, I'm inviting you in case if you're interested. Okay. All right. So, socialist economics. Let's try understand that, okay? Suppose we have a community. Just to make it easy, let's take smaller numbers, okay? We have 100 people. So 100 people, out of them, 40 are people who are at the age of working, like they are at least 16 or 18 years old. They are under 65 years old. So 40 people who can be employed. And you have, let's say, 20 children and 40 more people who are retired. So 40 workers, 40 retired people, and 20 children, 100 altogether. So let's say those 40 men earn, just to make it easy, $100 per month, okay? So socialism requires high, very, very high taxes, right? And the numbers I'm giving, probably they are not even correct. I think in a community of 100 people, even 40 people wouldn't be employed and employable. And they would have children on their own. Sometimes you have, poor families with multiple children. So even my example is a little incorrect. Maybe I should say 30 employees, 30 children, and 40 retired people, just to make it more realistic. So those 30 people earn $100 per month, a month. Out of those $100, the state, let's say, takes 40%. Yeah, just like in Germany, in many places. Sometimes it's even more. Are you ready to pay all those taxes, by the way? Sometimes it's even more. In Sweden, at some point, they were taking 60% of the salary. There was this famous Swedish writer, Astrid Lindgren, who wrote a special satirical fairy tale. Oh, by the way, TikTok is telling me that some comments in this live were filtered to protect the community's experience. So, in case if I'm not reading your comment, you should know that it was filtered or censored by TikTok. Try to write down the same thing, but use stars, zeros, cut the words in the middle, so that your comments are visible, okay? Now, her fairy tale, her story was called Pomperipossa in Monismania. That's the title of her story. And she was pissed off because, as a writer, at some point she was paying 100% taxes, like 60% from one salary and 60% from another salary. And she had to pay, as an individual independent writer, she had to pay also some additional taxes and additional fees, and she was getting almost nothing. Okay, I'm writing Ideas Pomperipossa in Monismania. I think this is the correct name of her story. Just let it go, bro. Okay, nurse, your advice on my facial hair or whatever is useless. Zero value. So, yeah. Now, let's get back to the example of our community. 30 people who work and they pay 40% of their $100. So they are left with $60. And with $60 per month, they have to pay the rent, they have to pay for the utilities, they have to take care of their basic needs, and their family members, their children, etc. And they have to pay in collectivist structures. You always have those trusts, those committees, group of people who collect money for this and that, for the working class. In the USSR, it was very common. If you read Ayn Rand's books, like one of the books, and after this I'll read your comment, okay? I eat mulch. So I'll give you the name. We the Living. Ayn Rand, she lived in the USSR actually. So what she writes in this book is a lot of it is autobiographical. It's things she witnessed, she went through, she experienced in the USSR. Okay, We the Living. I strongly recommend you, if you like socialism, if you like Marxism and stuff like that, you should be ready to see the other side of the moon. Okay, if you romanticize it, you know. Okay, so I Eat Mulch says capitalism was objectively good and progressive over feudalism, but it cannot grow indefinitely. Well, again, I Eat Mulch, you are making very abstract claims around which it's easy to agree, but you can say the same about socialism. Like if I say socialism cannot grow indefinitely, you have to agree with me. Nothing can grow indefinitely. Your claims are so vague, so generalized, that they prove nothing. You know, you can say that about socialism, about capitalism, about anything. Nothing can not grow indefinitely. Nothing can grow indefinitely. So it's when you say those things, it's as if you say nothing. You know, your argument is useless because it's so general. It can be applied to everything. Our solar system cannot grow indefinitely. The sun cannot grow indefinitely. I, as a human, cannot grow indefinitely. Nothing can grow indefinitely. See, your argument is useless. You're not providing anything valuable. And a lot of collectivists are like this. Actually, this is their language. They want to take very generalist ideas and they think they are proving some point with those generalist ideas, but you don't. Of course, from the perspective of rhetoric, if you try to appeal to people who are not that educated, who are not thinking profoundly, they may read your sentences and they can go like, oh, this is so wise. Oh yeah, this is true. And you can impress some of your public who is not that educated, who is not interested in profound analysis, etc. But it's useless. Like when you deal with a rational human being who knows logic, reason, who understands what you're doing, it's not useful. So he says Soviet Russia post-Stalin was objectively bad. When you say post-Stalin, do you mean that during Stalin or before Stalin Soviet Russia was good? That's a very horrible claim to make. During Stalin's time, Soviet Russia was horrible as well. All the repressions, all the murders, the so-called Holodomor, which was hunger artificially created by socialists. It was terrible. And before Stalin, it was horrible. During Stalin, it was terrible, very bad, in terms of human rights, in terms of the economy of the country, in terms of everything. It was hell on earth. So your claim is kind of, it's as if you're trying to justify Stalin. You know, that's what it sounds. And that's horrible. If you do that consciously, you're, I would say, based on my values, you're a bad person. I'm just returning your energy. You only reply to my statements with vague platitudes. Well, this is why I invited you to speak. And I'm giving you specific examples from China, from the USSR, from Ayn Rand's experience, my experience, and I'm even trying to develop this to explain economy, like how Soviet socialist economy works. I'm trying to develop this idea of a small village of 100 people living there. But in the same time, I'm replying to the comments, so it remains, it kind of, I'm giving it you in small installments. I don't have to justify Stalin, he was objectively. Oh, you are horrible. Objectively good, that's horrible. That's horrible. You are a bad, immoral person because you're justifying a murderer. You are justifying someone who murdered millions of people, who sent millions to gulags. You are so immoral. You are disgusting. And calling it objectively. Like the secret police of Stalin was as horrible as the Gestapo in Nazi Germany. And you are justifying all of that blood spilling, all of those unjustified arrests and violations. I'm sure you are against ICE, right? What ICE is doing now. But you support Stalin and his crimes. You are an immoral human being. That's very ugly. You are disgusting. He's saying, explain why 70% of current Russians still like Stalin then. Because they also support Putin. Because they are illiterate, ignorant, fearful, hateful. They also support the invasion of Ukraine. They support the idea of destroying a sovereign country. So, oh yeah, he's saying, yes, I'm against. You're against ICE, but you are pro-Stalin? This is a contradiction. A rational human being cannot live with such contradictions. You cannot drive your car and constantly hit those two pedals for gas and for stop. You will screw your car if you do that. Now you are screwing your mind with contradictions like that. You hate ICE and you compare it with Gestapo, but you support Stalin, who was a horrible murderer, whose secret army, KGB, was way, way worse than today's ICE. No, you are screwed. You need to be very honest with yourself, honestly. So again, now I will ignore your comments for a while and I will develop my idea of a socialist economical model just to vocalize it and understand like how socialism works. And again, if there are socialists who think I am wrong, you are welcome to join and have a chat with me and prove your point. Okay. So 30 people work in that village of 100 people. They earn only $100. Okay. And $40 are taken by the state, and approximately, let's say, 5 to 15, or let's take 10, okay, the average 10% of their income is taken by different unions, councils, committees, just as it was done in the USSR. Okay, so they are left with 50% of their income, $50 per month. Like if we take away everything they have to pay for, rent or house maintenance, if they own something, well, but in socialism you don't own anything, you know. So even if you are given a free apartment, which was the case in the USSR, still you have to pay for lots of things, for the cleanliness of the apartment. You maintained one individual's salary who was taking care of that building, and lots of crazy things. They were gathering money for so many causes. So $50 are left to those people. So rent, let's say their rent is around, I'm giving you a low number, $15. They have to spend, let's say, $20 for on food for themselves and their families, so 15 plus 20, 35, and they have to spend on some form of entertainment, some form of maintenance, like maintaining their apartments, their buildings, and utilities. So they already have only $15, but now they already are in debt because they cannot pay for some of that, like utilities and stuff like that. They are already in debt because they cannot pay for everything. In USSR, you had a lot of things that were for free, in brackets. In some cases, it was for free, like medicine. But free medicine was horrible, and you had to wait for months. And then, at some point, those hospitals were built, but the renovation of the hospital was so expensive that it couldn't be carried out for many, many, many decades. Even today, if you go to Russia, in Rostov, which is a city in Russia in the southern area, you have hospitals where they still have beds that were donated to those hospitals by the wife of Winston Churchill from around 30s. They are still using those beds. So, and in the USSR, they had this big idea of creating not houses, living spaces, like for the livestock. You have all those cows in one building, right? They treated individuals like that. They wanted to eliminate private property at all, and they wanted to have, let's call them palaces, or living spaces where you didn't have anything private. The only thing that stopped them was those projects were super expensive. So money still played an important role. Money and the availability of goods. So that's the only thing. They built a few of those crazy, ugly, huge buildings, long and disgusting and lifeless. But then they had to stop because it was not sustainable. They couldn't pay for it. They couldn't afford it. So socialism fails because they take so much money from the individuals on so many causes. They also, the big problem in socialism is the collective decides everything, not the market, not the rules of the market, but the collective. Like in today's post-Soviet countries, like in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Russia, it is the same. Like a small group of people or the leader decides, okay, for the upcoming 5 or 10 years, we are going to grow this much crops, cotton and corn. Or in Belarus, they are very famous for their tractors, and they just decide, okay, well, within the upcoming 3 to 5 years, we're going to build 25,000 tractors. Then no one pays for those tractors. And those tractors cannot be sold also because of the sanctions and because they are bad, because there is no competition, because everything is paid by the state, and neither the builders nor the state cares about it being top quality because there's no competition. So it's not sustainable. Again, for some time they built this huge amount of tractors or crops, and then they have to sell it for lower prices to places like India or each other, and some of the produce is just, or the products and goods are just rotting because no one wants them, just like the Tesla cars now, because they don't care about objective reality. They care about their collectivist vision, like we the collective, we the working class, we see it this way, we want it this way. So this is why socialist economics fail, and this is why people live in poverty in socialist communities. So China is thriving because China serves as a huge warehouse to all those capitalist countries, and especially to the United States. If all those capitalist countries stop buying from China, China will die in poverty. China will return to the time of Mao, where millions and millions of Chinese people were dying of hunger, you know. What other, do we have any successful example of a socialist economy and economics? I don't know. I don't see anything successful. If I'm wrong, again, you can give me some examples. I will study them. I don't know. If we take Sweden, I did not study it much, and actually in Sweden the socialist party lost when Astrid Lindgren wrote her story. For a long time, that socialist political party was leading, and then they lost because it was getting out of hand. So even Sweden is not a very good example in terms of socialism because it was terrible. And they had a very talented movie maker, Bergman. Bergman was terrorized by the taxation, what is it called? Taxation police or something. He actually ended up in a hospital with clinical depression because he was arrested during a movie shot. He was shooting a new beautiful movie, and his movies are so beautiful. And they arrested him and some of his helpers. They held them for hours, accusing them of hiding some taxes. And he just left Sweden. So Sweden lost a very renowned and celebrated talent because of its collectivist and socialist policies. So yeah, Sweden isn't a very good example either. Okay, now I will read some of the comments of comrade who eats mulch. Oh, he was so disgusting with his Stalin. Bold claims. Let's see any evidence for them. What is bold claims? What are you talking about? The history of China and Mao? Or the history of the USSR? Which is documented, which I heard from people who lived through it. Read Ayn Rand's books. A lot of it is documental because she has gone through all of that. So what you are calling bold claims, be more specific. Asking for sources on your claims. I promise I've read more than you. Yeah, probably you've read a lot of socialist stuff. Sources on your claims. Again, I'm telling you, one, Ayn Rand. Read her literature because she has gone through that. I already presented you another source, Astrid Lindgren, and her story, Pomperipossa in Monismania. Read those things. Also, if you want sources, we have Google, we have ChatGPT. Ask ChatGPT to provide you sources. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, Wikipedia is not a very good source. If you pretend to be an academician who will laugh at the idea of Wikipedia as a source, you can at least check the sources mentioned in Wikipedia articles, okay? You will have papers, you will have articles, you will have historical reports. about Mao and all the deaths, about Stalin and his horrible executions, and millions of people, like in post-Soviet countries, you have no families, almost no families, whose grandparents or grandparents haven't been wrongly, and it was done on purpose, they would be wrongly sentenced to something like treason, and then they would be sent to Siberia, they would be executed. Even the hostages, like when the Second World War started, Stalin claimed that we have no hostages, we have traitors, and millions of Soviet hostages in Nazi camps were later sentenced to prison, and some of them were unalivened by Stalin and by socialism. So you can study all those things. If you pretend that you read more than me, you must have seen all this historical material. If you are honest with yourself, if you truly value facts, you couldn't have gone past all of this evidence and not stopped and not noticed that. If you haven't, then you have a problem. Explain how famines were regular before the Soviets, but were ended by Stalin. You are so brainwashed. Famines were not ended by Stalin. Stalin organized one of the biggest and worst famines in human history. So I'm writing this word, Holodomor. Ask Ukrainians. Holodomor. Millions of people were unalivened, Holodomor, because Stalin kept the wheat and said, we need that just in case if we have some issues, don't give that wheat to the people. And in the Soviet Russia, there were so many cases, but you haven't heard of this, of course, cases where villagers would riot and they would even attack Soviet officials. Again, read Ayn Rand's We the Living. And those instances, you only have some testimonies from people, because the Soviets, of course, they wouldn't write about this. Those stories were silenced, they were censored. But you had Russian villagers who attacked Soviet officials, sometimes even unalivened them, and later were unalivened by the thugs of Stalin for that, because they were hungry. They had nothing to eat, and the Soviet government would come and they would take everything. They would take the cattle, they would take the crops, they would take the tools, and people were starving. You are clearly brainwashed. Wow, what a pitiful thing to see. Wow. And you consider yourself someone who read a lot, as someone who knows a lot. Crazy. That's crazy. You are so misinformed, and there is so much ignorance in you. In China, the markets are used to benefit the people. Well, here in LA, we have public transportation, and there in China, we have public transportation. So in capitalism, it is still benefiting the people. We have public libraries here under capitalism, and I have Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, from a nearby library. So public benefits from free market capitalism. And by the way, in China, they also have corruption. They had officials who were executed for corruption. And of course, as the ruling elite keeps everything secret, we don't know about all the wealth and riches they have accumulated for themselves, just like Putler or Putin. Palaces and luxury life, we are just not aware of a lot of that because they are still ruling. Libya, Burkina Faso, Cuba all objectively outgrew the rest of the world before being stopped. Oh, stopped. One of your favorite arguments. It's not socialism to be blamed. It's the bloody capitalism. I love Ayn Rand's book because some of her heroes actually are like that in order to demonstrate this very point that this guy makes. Yeah, that they were stopped. One of the main heroes, who is a rich bad guy, uses this same argument. He says, I am not to be blamed. It's not my fault. I couldn't help it. So even the USSR, you know, the collapse of the USSR, now they are saying, oh, it was about some Jewish conspiracy, it was about some sanctions, it was not that the USSR was not viable. It's just crazy, funny, and pitiful. It's just blaming someone else. It's not assuming responsibility. And today, Libya, Cuba, Burkina Faso, in what state are they? Cite primary sources. I already did. You cannot hear. You are so brainwashed. You cannot hear. Yeah, I knew that you would say Wikipedia is not a source. It's known to be. Again, Wikipedia has many sources. You have encyclopedias, you have articles, you have reports. If you're interested, and I'm sure, I'm like sure, if you need something about socialism and stuff, just be honest and just tell it to yourself. Weren't you reading Wikipedia when you needed it? And will you not do it when you need it to get some information about some socialist, POS, Marxist bullshit, etc.? I'm convinced you will do it. I'm convinced you will read Wikipedia, you will go to the main sources, and you will be using them. I am convinced of it. A Grover Fur, I don't know who that is. Famines happened, but it wasn't man-made. It was rust and oh. Now, a few comments before, you were claiming that there were no famines. Now it turns out famines happened, but it wasn't. It was man-made. You are lying. It was designed by Stalin. And actually, in the USSR, they had this idea that man was above nature, and they caused a lot of man-made disasters. Like sometimes they would turn the direction of entire rivers, and all the green area around those rivers would die, and there was huge famine. Villages and cities would suffer. There is this famous crazy story with a tribe that was most of their members were unalivened accidentally because the Soviets believed they were civilized people, and they went to those primitive tribes and they said, you shouldn't wash your body with the grease of the seals and those animals. You should use baths. They built baths, and those people for generations they didn't live that lifestyle. They took the baths. They changed their lifestyle in dramatic ways, and most of the tribe was just wiped out. So again, if you want sources, you can ask ChatGPT. Just ask, like, what is this story about a tribe, a group of people who were accidentally genocided because of the policy of the Soviets. And you will have some sources, you will have some knowledge. Don't put words in my mouth. The source is for this. Mulch, you seem to be very brainwashed. You seem to be pretending to know the source of everything you say. No, you most probably memorized a few things from Marx, and you are so poor mentally that you think you can cite every source that you have. It shows the poverty of your mind. Because if you can cite everything and mention the sources, it means you have so little information. You are so brainwashed, like a religious zealot who can cite the book and the source. That's crazy. Yes, I cannot give you the source of that story right now because we studied that at the university. And now I'm 36 years old. My professor told me about it around 16 or more years ago. So naturally, I cannot just out of the blue give you a source. It was during a university course at a state university in the Republic of Armenia, a post-Soviet country. So you're so full of shit. You are so narrow-minded. You expect me to remember sources of those things? No, it shows how impoverished your thinking is. No, I am sure if I ask ChatGPT right now, I could find sources. I'm just live right now, so I'm not doing that, but I'm certain I can do that. An example, I knew about a legend that some Muslim Arab invader used the belief of the Egyptians. They worshipped cats. So that Arab invader ordered his army to take cats and march with the cats so that the Egyptians wouldn't oppose them. I just remembered this much from a documentary. I asked ChatGPT, what is this story about? And ChatGPT gave me all the answers. So it turns out it was not an Arab invader, it was a Persian king. And ChatGPT gave me the name of the king. So if you want to verify everything, ask Google, ask ChatGPT. You will have your sources. Ayn Rand, for instance, is not just a fiction author. She also writes a lot of nonfiction, and she is a living human being who lived in the USSR. So she put a lot of what she witnessed into her fiction. If you are unable to recognize this, you are stupid. If you are able to recognize this but you're manipulating, you are dishonest. Okay? So I think that's enough. You eat mulch, and it shows that mulch, that socialist mulch you've been eating, has affected your brain and your thinking in a crazy way. It has affected you negatively. Yeah, what a shame, what a pity. A human who justifies Stalin, one of the most horrible murderers of the 20th century. That's shocking. It's as if someone would justify the Mustache Man, or the famous socialist radical left killer Che Guevara. Having these kind of idols shows your own ideology. It shows your qualities. It shows that you are ready to lie, to cheat, to murder, because your idols, your icons were doing all of that. And if you justify them, it means you are ready to walk the walk that they walked. And you are stuck in that Machiavellian mindset that the end justifies the mean. That's horrible. All right. I am done for today. Yeah. subscribe to my channel, guys. And I upload everything on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel called New Intellectuals Community on YouTube. So you're welcome to also subscribe on YouTube. Okay, thank you and see you next time. Bye bye.